Hello, everyone. Today we'll learn about what type of studying of Torah do we need to make the blessing before. And so the quote from the Shulchan Aruch, the code of Jewish law, is one must recite Birkot Torah before learning any part of the Torah. So it doesn't matter if it's written or oral. That's basically what it means. And he explains, in other words, even one who only intends to learn midrash or halacha on a particular day must recite Birkot Torah at the onset of the day. The reason for this is that the entire Torah, whether it is Torah Shebichtav, the written Torah, or Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral Torah, the halachic segments, or the philosophical, was all given from Hashem to Moses on Mount Sinai. And that's according to the Yerushalmi in Pe'ah, chapter 2, halacha 4. And when studying them, one must recite who chose us from among all his nations and gave us his Torah. So basically, we already spoke about how Hashem decided to choose us from all the nations. I still haven't put the lyrics because I was looking for them, but I will do it later today, of the modern song of Avram Fried. But the idea is that everything in the Torah was already taught to us. So a simple example for this is, are we allowed or not allowed to drive a car on Shabbat? And so during the time that the Torah was given, of course, there was no such thing as a car. And so when cars started being invented, the rabbis were discussing whether or not it's allowed or not. And the most prevalent opinion is that since it's like igniting a fire where the gasoline has to be ignited and then start the machine, then that's why it's not allowed on Shabbat, because lighting fire is one of the malachot. It's actually the one that's mentioned in this Torah portion. Lo tevaru eshbem b'chol mashvatechem b'yom Shabbat. You should not ignite a fire in all of your dwellings on the Sabbath day. And then people start trying to figure out if there may be loopholes. For example, if I left my car running from Friday afternoon, am I still allowed to go into it and drive wherever I want? And there are many, many answers to that, but that is because we don't know for sure what Moses meant by igniting fire. And so most Orthodox opinions are that you're not allowed to go into a car even if it was running before Shabbat, but there's conservative and reform opinions that you are allowed because you're not igniting a new fire. Then the contra opinion to that was every time that you press on the brakes, then there's a light that's turned on that wasn't on before Shabbat because it's a result of you pressing on the brakes. And nobody will ever say that they're going to be able to drive without pressing the brakes ever. And that is lighting those lights of the brakes or other lights. And so that's how the discussion came. But basically, the oral Torah always supplements the written Torah. We can't separate between them. Just one example that I give, which might sound gross and not very appropriate, but when it tells us that Abraham circumcised all the males in his household and himself, it doesn't say what part of the body was circumcised. So we have to have the oral Torah without getting into details. We have to have the oral Torah to understand what the written Torah is about, because if everything that was given orally was written, there wouldn't be a building big enough to contain all the Torah scrolls of all the different details. So that's why we believe that the Torah is both the written and the oral, and they work hand to hand with each other, and there's no other way to explain it. Anyway, he gives an example. There is a dissension among the poskim regarding whether or not Birkot Torah must also be recited before thinking Torah thoughts. For example, a person who arises in the morning with a desire to ponder a few ideas of Torah, according to most poskim, does not need to recite the brachot. Still, there are those who disagree. In order to avoid uncertainty, one who wakes up and wishes to reflect upon words of Torah should first recite Birkot Torah and immediately afterwards say a few verses. And that's why we say the verses of Birkat Kohanim, and we also say the Mishnah of the rewards that are given in this world and in the next world, which is definitely from the oral Torah, because the next world is not mentioned explicitly in the written Torah. However, someone who temporarily wakes from his sleep in the middle of the night and wants to contemplate Torah ideas until he falls back to sleep need not recite Birkot Torah. And so there used to be a custom for people to wake up for what's called Tikkun Chatzot. And in Tikkun Chatzot, it's mostly prayers, it's not learning verses. But sometimes people would maybe start by learning some verses to get ready or to be exactly on time for when to start Tikkun Chatzot. So that's why the halacha is that we don't have to say it, since we're going to say it in the morning when we wake up. Those who listen to Jewish music when they wake up in the morning or in the middle of the night do not need to recite Birkot Torah, since they do not have the intention to learn. So somebody else already wrote the music, even if it's quoting verses, like the 400 plus songs that Rav Shlomo Kalnerbach composed. We are not learning Torah by reciting that music. And last but not least, one may recite Birkot Torah and Birkot Shachar while standing, sitting, lying down, and walking. Nevertheless, there are those who are strict to say Birkot Torah while standing or walking, but not while sitting or lying down. And that's related more to what we said yesterday about Havu Godel Eloheinu, that we rise when the Torah is passed around in the synagogue. And the Talmud actually criticizes people who stand before the Torah but don't stand before the Torah scholars. And one last story related to that, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, whenever he was in a clinic or somewhere else where pregnant women were coming in, he would stand up and people would ask him, "Why are you standing up? Obviously this woman has another seat. It's not like you're giving your seat for her." And his answer was, it has nothing to do with the respect for a pregnant woman or trying to give her a seat. It has to do with the fact that there's an angel inside the womb teaching the boy Torah or the girl Torah. And so I have to stand up because it's like a walking Sefer Torah. That's what he called it, Sefer Torah Mehalech. And so it is a custom to stand or walk while we're saying Birkot Torah instead of sitting down or lying down. And I think that story makes it so much more meaningful. And we'll just start the next paragraph, which talks about Birkot Torah for the whole day, which means that even if somebody takes a nap during the afternoon, they still have to say Birkot Torah only once. And we'll start with that and continue tomorrow. Birkot Torah are recited in the morning in conjunction with the recital of Birkot Shachar, and they encompass all learning performed throughout the day. Even if a person goes to eat and to work afterwards, he does not need to recite Birkot Torah upon returning to learn. In that respect, Birkot Torah differ from other Birkot Mitzvot. For example, Lulav, if I'm performing it once in the morning, but then I come home and I do it for my children or for my wife, I still have to repeat it again. These are the brachot of the performance of the mitzvah. Concerning all other mitzvot, every time a person performs a mitzvah anew, he must recite another bracha, because the mitzvah are only designated for a specific time of the day or a particular act. And I can even take the more extreme example of mezuzah. Every time that we affix a mezuzah, we say the blessing, even though the house already has 17 mezuzahs. And for example, the mitzvah of sukkah requires that a person eat and sleep in the sukkah, while at all other times he is permitted to go wherever he desires. Similarly, the mitzvah of talit can be fulfilled after 1 minute of the day. Therefore, every time one wraps himself anew in his talit, in the prayer shawl, or goes into the sukkah to eat another meal, he must repeat the particular bracha intended for that mitzvah. So even though this is a bracha of a mitzvah of learning Torah, there's still a stipulation, just like other mitzvot, certain mitzvot that we have to say it every time that we do it, as opposed to once a day. But because of Torah, we do only have to say once a day. So the conclusion is that if somebody goes for a nap during the day and wakes up and goes back to Yeshiva, to the Beis Midrash, they do not have to repeat this blessing again, because that blessing is inclusive of the whole day.